Hey, BassGeek here, and do you want to catch the biggest bass of the late winter, early spring? The biggest? Then you need to watch this. Oh, that's right, geeks. I am talking about a technique that I love. It pays off in the summer. It's one of my favorite things to throw for big bass in the summer. But like I've been telling you in a lot of these videos, it's the time to catch your PB right now. And there is nothing, I mean nothing. I wished I had some live scope footage of it because I've only seen a few baits where bass react to a bait this way. And it's this, the BR fish, and the jaw dropper. I mean, that's literally it. And you guys know how fond I am of those other two baits. And this bait is a flutter spoon. When you drop a flutter spoon around bass, it fires them up. There's a lot of times I'll use a flutter spoon around groups of bass just to get them fired up, and then follow it up with something like a BR fish or a Damiki rig and the jaw dropper and clean them up. A spoon is just something that the action just does something to them. So why don't we ever hear anybody talking about fishing this during the spring? We fish jerk baits, same concept. Well, I have been from the winter to the spring, big flutter spoons, and I'm going to show you, well, not necessarily big ones, different size ones match the hatch, but I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. And man, late winter, early spring, when those big girls are up sunning, incubating, ready to feed, because they need to feed a lot more this time of year than any other time, you will catch a tub. Let me show you the spoons I like. So I am talking about a spoon, a Ben Parker spoon. This is a little different type of spoon, but I love it during the winter time, and I'll explain to you what this actually is. A lot of guys know about their Mojo spoons. Now, I've got a crank wrap on this or spoon wrap on this, but this is a Ben Parker Magnum spoon. They make a ton of great spoons. One of my favorite is actually like their 4-inch spoon. Man, this thing has performed so well. So when you're around smaller bait, bass that are feeding on smaller bait, this little spoon right here and this little spoon right here are money. They're two of my summer staples. I know everybody loves the big spoon, but I am telling you, during the summertime when they are shallower and they are schooling, these two little bad boys do work for me. So let's talk about late winter, early spring spooning. One of my favorite winter spoons is actually this one right here. This is actually their Magnum striper spoon. Now, one thing I will do, this thing has got a gaff of a hook on it for stripers. So I will downsize that hook just a touch, because believe it or not, I will fish this for smallmouth inside schools of bait. But this spoon is like 2.5 ounces, somewhere in there. It's 2 ounces and change. It's huge, so it gets down quickly and I can fish it super deep. We'll talk about what I fish it on here in just a second. But this is an incredible spoon late in the year, and especially when you have bigger shad. Now, anytime you're spoon fishing, anytime you're fishing any type of spoon, whether it be just a small vertical spoon or one of these big Ben Parkers by Nichols, two things that I like, these are stinger hooks that are at the top. I love these things. A lot of times they'll come and they'll hit the top, and trust me, these are single hooks, but they'll get them. Something else you can do, and something is put on just a treble hook up here at the top, right? You can either connect it to the split ring or literally connect it to the line so that it'll slide up. The other thing is you want to make sure you've got a heavy quality swivel on there, because these things are going to create line twists like you can't believe. One of the other things that I use a lot, and it's again because I fish ultra clear water, is some of the spoon wraps by Crank Wrap. They just look incredibly natural. Now, sometimes I will wrap just the front, sometimes I will wrap the back. And believe it or not, what this one is, this is actually one of their crankbait wraps, because they don't make the spoon wraps this small. All you have to do is cut it out, wrap it on. It'll come on two sides, take you a lighter to it, and this sucker is stuck on. It's not going to come off on you. But again, you'll notice with this one, not necessarily the stinger hooks, but always a good swivel. Last but not least, this is the Mojo spoon by Nichols, and it is one of my absolute favorites when they're up shallow. And when you're in clear water, put those little crank wraps on this sucker and you hang on. The action is incredible. And this is probably my favorite as we get into late February and all the way into March, when those bass are feeding like crazy. They just can't resist this whole thing. So let me show you how I rig these things. Now, one thing I do love to do is put a snap on, but it needs to be a heavy duty snap. Now, it's fine for the smaller spoons like this one, but when we put this one on, you probably want to get away from the snap and just tie straight to that swivel, because sometimes these are going to be huge if they're really heavy test, but they can also pull free when you have a big bass on. So now, let me show you the rod, reel, and line setup for these. All right, geeks, this is my setup for my spoons. Guys, this is a TFO Tactical Elite, and this bad boy is a mag heavy. It is 1 to 5 ounces, makes a great swim bait rod. It is 8 foot long. I like a nice long rod when I'm doing this. Helps me get a farther cast out. Also helps me get and take up a lot of line. When we talk about the reel, this is, you can tell I've had it for a minute, the Super Duty, which they've changed up. I'll give you another reel that will work. They've got a Super Duty, but it's not the old school Super Duties like this, and I hate that they've kind of got away from them, but these are some big fish reels right here. Great reel, good wide spool for making long casts and fishing down deep. Again, K9, something that I use is the Pro 100, and I'm going to use on this most of the time, not as heavy as you think, about 15 to 17 pounds, because I want this to have a good free fall. 90% of the time you're fishing this in open water. And then when you do get it hung, you just gotta sacrifice. Snap that line off and come on back. But trust me, you get a hold of a bass, that 15 to 17 will bring his rear end in. Geeks, you fish these all pretty much the same, so I'm going to show you how to fish the big one right here. Okay, this is my Magnum striper spoon. This is the one that I'm going to fish down super deep. Like, I can get this down 60, 70, even 80 feet. Now, with a little bit of patience, I'll show you a little trick to get it to fall faster though, okay? Once it's down there, then you can start the erratic action. But first, let's talk about the cast. So when we're casting this, you're not going to want to come straight over your head. A lot of times it's going to be kind of a side cast lob, just like you're fishing if any of you fished your bigger swim baits. Cast it out there, kind of a side lob out there. You're not going to want to load your rod, because a lot of times that's when you're going to break your rod tips doing this. These heavier baits are going to do that for you. Now, once it hits the water, something you're going to want to do is feed it line to let it fall. Again, we'll talk about a little trick to that to get it to fall a little more quickly, especially if you're dropping it vertically. If you're casting it, it doesn't really work, but if you're dropping it vertically, you'll get it down a lot faster. And that trick basically is, when you drop it, what you want to do is you just want to just thumb the spool slightly. When you're thumbing that spool slightly, it's going to keep that bait a little taut, and it's going to cause it to fall straight down instead of flutter. So it'll get down a little bit quicker and a little bit deeper. Considering that these are like 2+ ounces, these big thick striper spoons, you can get them down real deep doing that. And retrieve for most of these spoons is going to be just a snap. 90% of the time you're just going to snap it up and then give it just a little bit of slack, and you'll see the line pull as it goes down. You'll snap it up and see the line pull as it goes down. Don't keep it tight. You want it to make that crazy fluttering action once you're in the process of actually trying to catch those bass. When you're trying to drop it, sure, keep your finger on there, get it down there quicker. But then when you're snapping it, you're just letting it fall. Not quite free spool, because on the fall you're going to want to be a line watcher. That line will twitch and you need to swing away. Now, I'm going to tell you a little trick that I've got kind of up my sleeve, especially in February and March. Crank Wrap makes a trout color wrap. Now they make it for their big glides, but I will put it on a spoon. And the trout in my area kind of like to congregate around those kind of mud banks. So what I like to do is take this spoon out there, drop it to the bottom, and then give it a few cranks. That way it comes up and it's swimming sideways. Let it drop again. And a lot of times, if there's big bass in the area, you're gonna draw them in. I hate that I'm telling you geeks that, but it is truly it's a killer. It really is a killer. So that's a little trick of mine if you got trout in your lakes. Good way to go catch some big bass. That's not necessarily on a big glide bait, especially if they're deep, and they do get deep on the lakes I fish. Setting the hook. 90% of the time when I'm setting the hook, it is going to be straight up or at a 45-degree angle. And then you're going to reel down, get the rod tip in the water, keep those bass from jumping, because that is a ton of metal that they are going to use to throw that hook. You fill their mouth with water, you drag them in, and you boat hop them. You don't lip them, you don't play them, you don't dilly-dally around, don't tiptoe through the tulips, or you're going to lose probably the biggest bass that you're going to have online all year long, especially this time of year. All right, geeks, make sure you go pick up some spoons from Nichols. Big spoons, little spoons. I'm telling you, have a spoon tied on. It is a go-to for me all year long. So as always, questions, comments in the comments section below. You geeks know I love to talk fishing with you. Like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell. 100% Watch Squad, where my boys at, and girls, if you're a 100% Watch Squad chick, all right? And as always, you guys have helped the channel out. I keep saying this, but you guys have really helped this channel start to pop again. And as always, every single one of you geeks rock.